Welcome back to the TST100 project. Last video you saw us get this bike moving under its own power and then we broke it. So in this video we're going to make a lot of progress. We're going to fix the motor. It's going to go back to the dyno. We're going to go to the track, and honestly this is the most successful video of all of the videos we've made so far. So stick around, it's going to be cool. Cheers.
All right, so part of the reason that the TST came apart was we're having problems with the gearbox, bearings or gears on the shafts on the gearbox, and then also we found out last time it came apart that one of our crank thrust washers had failed, and the big end bearing was about to fail. So I was like, oh, that's cool, I'll order some new rod kits and rebuild it, and I thought that there might be some error in the machining of the cases, that maybe the barrels weren't set in perpendicular to the con rods, and that got it all apart. And basically it failed because the Chinese cranks we got were shit. So if you come and have a look here, this is the big end pin cut in half, and this is the face that the thrust washer runs on. So it's quite important that this face is, like usually it's a precision ground flat surface, and you can see this one's just got some rough machining on it. And then the thrust washers themselves that sit on here, they're really poor quality, and the dimpling on them is proud, and the coating's really thin, and they're dished, and they're just terrible. So I rebuilt this one. This is a rebuilt crank of one of the Chinese ones, and then decided, you know what, we're too far into this to be mucking around with crap now. We're going to all the effort of trying to make everything perfect. So baby out with the bathwater with those, and then so we got some Doppler cranks. I did some quick research online, found that these were the best quality cranks that I could find, and the highest, most reviewed cranks for our application, and they look really nice. A couple of things that are upgraded, which is great, is the bearings. This is a 17mm bearing on this crank, and then they upgrade to 20mm on both sides. And then also the big end pin is upgraded. So these are a 16mm big end pin for the Chinese cranks, and they upgrade to an 18. And then also the little end bearing, you can see the little end bearing has these tiny little rollers, and according to the internet these things are quite notorious for coming apart as well. So they upgrade the little end bearing to a much bigger needle bearing. So I have a lot more confidence that these will work and we won't have any failures. They on their documentation, they rate them to 18,000 RPM, which is going to be plenty for what we're doing. New cranks, throw these in the bin, and then when we eventually will upgrade the cylinders from the ones that we've got, these cranks don't need to come out when we do the upgrade. We can leave the engine together and just swap cylinders over to the new racing cylinders. And then that leads us on to some of the other problems that we're having with the cases. So from the original video, if you've watched them, I machined this all on my friend's hobby mill, and it kind of did the job. It didn't have readouts, and there's no dials on it, and I had some pretty crude measurements, so it was very difficult to measure the bore spacings or the bearing spacings between the crank and the two gearbox shafts. Now that I've got the digital readout, I've been able to put one of the cases in the readout, measure everything, and verify what we thought, which is two of the shafts centers are too close to each other. So I think that was what was causing us our problems with the gearbox, is the gears were too tightly meshed. So really good that we can come fix this now. The solution to this is to oversize the bearing surfaces and then put sleeves in, so that then I can machine back to get my offsets correct, and then machine back to a nice press fit or light press fit for all the bearings. Another thing we're going to do while we're here is we're upgrading the crank coupler and seal situation in here. The first iteration of how it worked I wasn't very happy with. It was a bit, how you doing? So I've got a new design for how the crank coupler will work with two independent seals that keep everything's isolated, and I think that'll be a good long-term solution. Well, it's the same solution as how all the factories do it. So yeah, we've got everything we need now, and it's just a matter of getting stuck in and getting things machined up and fitting it all together. It's probably a good day or two work to get it back together, but I'm hoping that once this goes back together this time, that the bottom end should be good. So Let's get stuck in. Pop that on there. Ooh. Feel how flat that is.
It's almost like you got the right tools for the job now, I think.
Yeah, fucking, it's amazing. Well, ask me the fucking question.
What are you doing here, Glenn?
Right, so I've actually already machined the bottom case. So that one was the nicest case to start with to get everything set up. And my digital readout's still zeroed on the crank bearing at the moment on that engine. On that case, sorry. So now I'm going to bolt this case to it, and then that already lines up where I need to machine the bearing balls for this case, and I can also take a skim on this gearbox shaft, and that way I know that the two halves of the cases are perfectly matched. Again, as accurate as I can with this machine. Click. Quick video about the crank coupler. We've had a few questions about it. This was the original crank coupler. So they're really basic. They're just a concentric circle with a bore through the middle, split, a couple of holes so it can pinch it. Learned the hard way on this one. As you can see, we've done a bit of a rough balancing job on it. Actually, when these things are spinning at 14,000 RPM, the imbalance caused by the bolts is quite severe. So that was version 1, but I've redesigned the motor a bit because when I did it the first time, I didn't do it very well, and there was no allowance for any seals for the crank, so I initially just relied on the seals on the bearing, which, to be truthfully honest with you, we're fine. The bearings are greased inside, and they're operating within the RPM limits and load limits for the greased bearings, so but not as good as a proper seal. So while we're doing the cases and remachining everything, thought we'd throw that one out and make a new one. So this is the new one. A few little updates. You can see it's got a broached keyways on it. That lets me pick up on the keyways on the crankshafts and accurately index the cranks at 180 degrees. And then the other thing that we've done is made a provision to put some proper lip seals in. So I'm really tight for space inside the engine there. So it's a bit tricky. Everything's, fighting for real estate. So these guys live right there like that. And then the crank coupler will slip in like so. You can see I've just got just enough clearance between everything in there to make everything all work. Happy days. And then just torque these up to clamp it all up. The other detail as well, you're probably wondering what that flat is. So that's to balance it. So same thing to take it to accommodate for the loss of mass around the bolt holes in the groove and the slot through here. Rather than drilling a hole, just put a little flat on it. Did all of that just in SolidWorks, calculated the center of mass in SolidWorks and adjusted it until it was basically 0, and then machined everything to a dimension and an angle. So it seems pretty good. We're getting very close to being ready to assemble the engine. I've had the cases in the mill, redoing the faces, making sure that my bearing trenches are in line with the barrels, making sure there's no angle there. So time to do some assembly. Right, so you would have seen some of the footage from the motor going back together. We've now got it back in the bike. Had one little hiccup, one of the head O-rings hadn't quite seated properly, so did actually have to pull it back out to take care of that. That seems to be all fixed and sorted now. And one little thing that I decided to do in the bike, because it's a bit easier, is I don't have a key on the trigger wheel. So previously I was just using the friction of the bolt, tightening it to hold it in place. But the problem is if the bolt comes out like it just did earlier when you're trying to start it with this here, then you lose your timing, so that's a pain in the ass. So we're going to do what's called a Scotch key, which is basically I'm going to drill, you can see the line between the crank material and the trigger wheel material. I'm going to drill a small hole, about 2.5 or 3 mil hole through that intersects both the bits of material, and then I can knock a little pin in and then that will index the trigger wheel onto the crank so we can take it on and off and don't have to worry about it. Normally you just use like a normal key, but I don't have a broach to make a square keyway, and machining the crank was going to be difficult, and I don't have a little cutters, so this is just an easy way to do it. I did it on the crankshaft on the other side on the first build of this for the drive gear, and it seemed to work really good, so I've got good confidence that it'll work mint for this. So this bolt here is just a temporary bolt. You can see I've cut half of the bolt off, so I can tighten it up and it leaves some of the crank exposed and the trigger wheel exposed, and then that lets me drill in the middle. So we'll give that a little tickle up, and yeah. So now you can see the hole is half in the crank and half in the gear. I'll probably actually just use an old blunt 3mm drill shank and cut it down so that it fits in there, and then put a new bolt over the top and we're done. Easy as. We've done new throttle bodies. These were the plastic ones that we were running, and you can probably see here that they started to deviate a little bit, so that's where our fuel rail was bolted on. And under load on the last dyno session, it was like, oh, why is it pissing fuel out? And the whole fuel rail had rolled backwards as the plastic gave up, which didn't seem to be from heat because it wasn't getting hot there, but I think the oil in the fuel was starting to affect the plastic. So it's been updated. We've got some 3D printed aluminium ones on, which work awesome. Exactly the same design, nothing different, just machined out of aluminium now instead of 3D printed plastic. And yeah, so that's a big improvement in terms of reliability and just consistency without any issues. The other thing we've done is some new pipes. So the other pipes are very mild. We're hoping that these ones here will perform a bit better. They're just a direct copy of Fritz Overmars Molossi pipe, which there's a drawing of those floating around on the internet. So rather than reinvent the wheel, I thought I would just remanufacture those. So we'll see how those go as well. We've actually done these ones properly. We've made up some slip joints at the front, so the last pipe cracked straight away, which we were expecting. So hopefully these ones here hold in. So now it's off to the dyno. Give it a run on the dyno, see if we can get a tune in it, and then bugger off to the track and see what breaks.
We're back at the dyno at Jason Statham's house. And we're actually getting some tuning done this time.
Yep, hasn't broken. Gearbox is in one piece. It's not making any weird noises. I actually don't even think it's leaking oil now.
That's alright, eh?
Yeah. Good start.
Yeah, we had some weird gremlins, but we're tuning it.
Yeah, we've got a software issue, but our software guy's not here today, so Kyle, your work's cut out for you.
The software issue that we're talking about is that the bike just won't rev out. So what you're about to see is us figuring out that if we leave the data logger on for the crank trigger, the problem goes away. So we just left it like that for dynoing, and then we got Carl to fix it before we went to the track. Right, we're at the track. The bike just came from the dyno. It's ready to go. So we're going to go out on the track for the first time ever. Stick some cameras on it and show you how it goes.
Or doesn't.
Or doesn't, yeah. Let's do it.
Ronan's stoked. Ronan. Are you stoked? Woo!
Now you can probably tell the transient and partial throttle tune is not that great. It's actually quite a bit too rich, so I'd roll on or off and the bike would flood and wouldn't fire properly. So I'm about to go back into the pits and then we make some changes to the tune. We did this over and over again all day, and that's how we made progress. I was starting to figure out how to ride around it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was watching you.
But like if I had to go too low on the revs, it would just foul up.
What was weird though is that you started coming through spark at second and it was running it out okay.
Yeah, I didn't like doing anything.
Oh, so you were on the gas.
I got on the gas and just flooded. It's too rich at full throttle, low RPM. Yeah, so bottom of the top left of the fuel table. Is the ticket because the pipe hasn't come on yet.
I agree.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
gearbox,
it's got nothing. It's just all bog.
What's that?
gearbox hasn't jumped out. So.
Yeah, that's good. Case is still in one piece.
It's jinxing a lot of things, mate.
Yeah.
I don't thought you were smart on that. Thought we were above fucking superstition.
Just in case.
Just in case, what makes you feel better?
What kind of fucking way?
Yeah, let me touch some wood.
Right.
I would honestly take a substantial amount of the high CPS low RPM.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It doesn't need full at that point.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
reckon you're thinking in that.
Yeah, yeah.
Glenn's drinking cans because we had a successful day. Bike went out on track and we tuned it all day. It didn't break. Everything's still on the inside.
I settled that record with one arm.
Yeah, Glenn didn't do that. me and Carl rode it because Glenn's an invalid today. No, it was great. The engine works good. I mean, it didn't run very well the first time as we expected, but every time we went out we made changes and got it running better and better and better, and by the end of the day the clutch actually stopped working, which is why we stopped riding it. But other than that, the fueling is getting so close to where we want it. Glenn, talk about what you did with the fueling. I mean, we got it to the point where you can actually ride it and it recovers and it doesn't just flood it like normally people are finding with fuel injected two-strokes. So
Yeah, it's basically we've just implemented the acceleration enleanment, which isn't a word, but I'm making it a word, which pulls fuel out when you initially open the throttle, which has been the whole concept with the fuel injection on this the whole time. So today was the first time to see that work and like being able to adjust it and see it respond on track. What's really interesting with the fuel injection is you have no window. If you over fuel it and the cylinder doesn't fire, it will never recover. So the margin for error between being too lean and too rich is really narrow, but we managed to find it. Like, it's at the point where if it had good gearing in the clutch, you'd be able to ride it pretty much like a normal two-stroke now. The gearing's horrific on it. It's massively over-geared, so we're only using 4th gear, so that's shit. Yeah. But so solve a few of those simple problems, make the clutch work, and get the gearing right, and yeah, it's real. I mean, I'm really happy. If this was as good as I got it, I think I'd be content, but I reckon we've just sort of broken the surface of how good it can get, because every session, as Luke said, it just got better and better and better, and we just learned a little bit more. Yeah. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to ride it, but I got to hear it a lot from the side of the track today, and it sounds sick.
Sounds unreal, yeah. So, Kyle rode his MB100 here today as well, MB125, and so another, pretty comparable two-stroke bucket bike. And then he rode it back to back with this. So, Kyle, what do you reckon?
It's getting very close. I actually followed you for a few laps, and honestly, when you get the TST up on the pipe, there's not that much, and the MB is a healthy two-stroke. Yeah. So it's looking really solid. I think we're going to be making more and more power as we go. Yeah. As Glenn pointed out, we're finally getting some colour in the pipes. Yep. So it's a good sign.
Yeah. Well, we're at the dyno earlier today, as you know, and it made 23 horsepower on the dyno, but that was like, the tune wasn't really where it's at now, and it was pretty far out. And we've got these really cheap scooter cylinders on it, so this is like the bottom end of how much power it's going to make. I think it'll be probably 24, 25 now after today's tuning, and yeah, when we start throwing some actually expensive cylinders at it, man, this thing's going to be ridiculously fast.
Yeah. Chassis.
Yeah, so after riding it, I've done a lot of laps around this track, and I thought, it's a fully custom chassis. It's like, surely there's something we need to change, but man, it rails corners like you wouldn't believe. So I normally ride an FXR 150, and this thing compared to that, you just look at an Apex and you arrive at it, like it just, the chassis is unbelievable. We still have the stock Gixxer shock and forks, so they're pretty they leave a lot to be desired, but at least we know now we can go and buy a shock, and it's gonna, it's going into a good chassis. We're not wasting our time, so we didn't buy one yet because it was an unknown. But no chatter, no weird issues. You could, really rail a corner, and it just holds it nice and stable. And the transitions between corners, man, it just flicks so quick. Hey, Kyle, what did you reckon?
Literally, you don't really think about turning; it just turns. All your brain power is really focused on trying to get out of the corner cleanly on the motor. But it's really incredible, especially since it's literally the first time it's all together on the track.
Yeah,
extremely successful day, I would say.
I think this is the most successful day so far of this whole build. I mean, everything just worked. Nothing fell off. Nothing broke. We could just keep taking steps forward. Yeah, the gearing's wrong and the clutch needs a bleed, but those are such minor issues. Just a sprocket and bleed up the clutch and then come back here and make more progress. Cheers, guys.